This August, archaeologists have found some of the most amazing missing chapters yet. They have found entire villages swallowed by the sea, a mysterious people whose DNA vanished from the world, and proof that one of history's most famous disasters was not the end of the story. We will journey from the bottom of the ocean to the highest mountains to meet the real people of the past. What if the stories we have been told are only half the picture, and the other half was just waiting for us to find it? Our journey starts 8,500 years ago, off the coast of Denmark. After the last ice age, the world was warming up. Giant sheets of ice were melting, and the sea was rising fast, about 6.5 feet every 100 years. For the Stone Age people who lived along the coast, this meant their world was slowly disappearing. Now, archaeologists have found one of their lost homes. Divers went down 26 feet into the dark blue water of the Bay of Aarhus. There on the seabed, they found a settlement, perfectly frozen in time. The cold, dark water had no oxygen, so it acted like a time capsule. Everything was saved. The divers found stone tools and arrowheads used for hunting. They found animal bones from ancient meals and even a seal tooth. They carefully collected a small piece of carved wood, a simple tool held by a human hand thousands of years ago. They even found perfectly preserved hazelnuts. These finds tell us about a community of hunters and gatherers who lived right on the edge of the sea. They fished, they hunted, and they watched as the water crept closer and closer. Until one day, their village was gone, forever. But what if that whole group of people did not just sink beneath the waves, but vanished from history itself? Our next stop takes us high into the mountains of South America to find a ghost lineage. In Colombia, near the capital city of Bogota, scientists have just published the first ever ancient human DNA from the country. They took tiny samples from the bones and teeth of people who lived 6,000 years ago at a site called Chicua. When the results came back, the scientists were shocked. The DNA from these ancient people did not match any other known group, ancient or modern, in North, Central, or South America. They had found a completely unknown branch of the human family tree. These people were hunter-gatherers who lived in a small, isolated group on the high plains. Researchers believe they might have been part of the very first wave of humans who spread across South America. For thousands of years, their story unfolded in these mountains, but then something strange happened. About 4,000 years after they first appeared, they vanished. When scientists tested DNA from people who lived in the same area just 2,000 years later, the ghost lineage was gone. Their genes were not passed on. It was as if a whole new group of people arrived and the original population was completely replaced. Who were they, and where did they go? It is a mystery that is just beginning. From a people who disappeared, our story now gets personal. We travel to ancient Europe to meet two sisters and learn about their hard and painful lives. Deep in a forest in what is now the Czech Republic, people in the Stone Age mined for a special rock called chert. They use it to make sharp tools and weapons. Over 5,000 years ago, two sisters worked in these dark, dangerous mines. We know their story because archaeologists found them buried together, one on top of the other, at the bottom of a 20-foot deep mine shaft. Using new technology, scientists brought their story to light. DNA tests showed that they were sisters. The older one was about 35 to 40 years old with blonde hair and blue eyes. The younger sister was 30 to 35 with dark hair and green or hazel eyes. Their bones told a story of a brutal life. Their spines were damaged from carrying heavy loads while bent over. One sister had a badly healed broken forearm. This means she kept working even after a serious, painful injury. They ate more meat than other people at the time, maybe because they were given extra food for their hard labor. But the biggest mystery was found on the chest of one sister. There lay the skeleton of a newborn baby who was not related to either one of them. Why was this baby buried with them in the mine? Were they victims of an accident, or was this something darker, like a human sacrifice? We may never know for sure. These sisters were part of a family, but how were ancient communities organized? Our next discovery in China challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient societies. In eastern China, at a site called Fujia, a Neolithic village stood near the sea nearly 5,000 years ago. Archaeologists there excavated over 500 graves in 2 separate cemeteries. They decided to test the DNA from 60 of the people buried there to see how they were related. The results revealed a social structure that is very rare in the ancient world. It was a society built around mothers. In the first cemetery, every single person shared the same maternal DNA, meaning they were all related through their mothers. In the second cemetery, almost everyone shared a different maternal line. This means that when a person died, they were buried with their mother's family, not their father's. Even the men were buried with their mother's clan. But when scientists looked at the paternal DNA, passed from father to son, it was very diverse. This suggests that men from other places married the women of Fujiya and came to live with their wives' families. This matrilineal society was stable and strong, lasting for at least 10 generations over 250 years. It shows us that there was not just one way to build a society in the ancient world. The people of Fujiya built their world on the coast, but what about people who had to survive in one of the harshest places on Earth? We now travel to the deserts of India to find a lost city in the sand. The Harappan civilization was one of the first great urban cultures in the world, famous for its large cities along the Indus River. We thought we knew where its borders were, but a new discovery in the Thar Desert in Rajasthan, India, has changed the map. Near the border with Pakistan, archaeologists found the remains of a 4,500-year-old Harappan settlement. This is the first time a Harappan city has ever been found in this deep, sandy desert. The site, called Rataria Deri, was a true settlement, not just a small camp. Researchers found the remains of ancient walls, a furnace, and bricks just like those used in the biggest Harappan cities. They found beautiful red and wheat-colored pottery, including jars, bowls, and cups. They also found sharp blades made from church stone that came all the way from modern-day Pakistan. Bangles made from clay and conch shells, which could only come from the seacoast, show that these desert people were part of a huge trade network. This discovery proves the Harappans were amazing adapters, able to build cities and thrive, even in the toughest environments. The Harappans built cities of brick, but other cultures built monuments to their powerful warriors. In southern Bulgaria, archaeologists doing rescue work for a new power cable found something amazing. It was the 2,200-year-old grave of a powerful Thracian warrior. The man was between 35 and 40 years old when he died, and he was buried like a king. On his head, he wore a wreath made of silver covered in gold, a symbol of great honor. He was buried with imported pottery from across the Mediterranean, a silver bracelet, and a special Greek sword with a handle decorated with gold and precious stones. But he was not buried alone. Lying next to him was his warhorse, a tradition for the most elite Thracian nobles. The horse was also covered in treasure. Its harness was decorated with bronze and gold medallions. These small pieces of art showed scenes from Greek myths, like the hero Hercules wrestling a giant. The craftsmanship is so incredible, it shows just how skilled Thracian metal workers were. This tomb, along with another rich warrior burial found just a short distance away, tells us this area was a special place, a final resting place for the great rulers of a forgotten kingdom. We now travel south to the coast of Egypt, where a once great port city was swallowed by the sea. Before the great city of Alexandria was founded, another port was one of the most important in Egypt. It was called Canopus. For hundreds of years, it was a center for trade and religion, but its location on the coast was its weakness. Earthquakes, rising sea levels, and shifting ground slowly doomed the city. By the 8th century, Canopus was lost beneath the waves of Abu Qir Bay. Now, 2,000 years later, it is rising from the depths. In a massive underwater project, divers and cranes have been lifting the city's treasures out of the water. They have found the stone foundations of buildings where people lived, worked, and worshipped. They uncovered reservoirs for storing fresh water and rock-cut ponds for raising fish. They even found a 400-foot-long dock with stone anchors and parts of a merchant ship. But the most amazing finds are the statues. A giant sphinx made of quartz has been raised, along with a granite statue of an Egyptian queen and the marble figure of a Roman nobleman. These beautiful objects are a ghostly reminder of a rich city that was claimed by the sea. Canopus was lost to a natural disaster, but what about the most famous disaster of all? We all know the story of Pompeii, the city buried by Mount Vesuvius. But it turns out that was not the end of the story. The story we all know is that in the year 79, Mount Vesuvius erupted and the city of Pompeii was buried, frozen in time. But that is not true. New excavations are revealing a secret history. After the eruption, people came back. For centuries, a small community lived among the ruins. These were likely the survivors who were too poor to start a new life somewhere else. They were joined by others looking for valuables in the ash. They built a new, makeshift life on top of the old one. The eruption had buried the ground floors of the buildings, so people lived on the upper floors that were still sticking out of the ash. The buried rooms below became their cellars. Archaeologists have found ovens for baking bread and mills for grinding grain built inside these buried spaces. It was not a grand Roman city anymore. It was more like a small, rough settlement. People lived this way for about 400 years, until the site was finally left empty in the 5th century, probably after another eruption. For years, archaeologists ignored these clues, sweeping them away to get to the famous frescoes below. Now, we know Pompeii did not die in a day. It survived. The survivors of Pompeii stayed close to home. But our final discovery shows that people in the ancient world traveled much farther than we ever thought possible. When we picture England 1400 years ago, we think of the Anglo-Saxons and Vikings, but we do not think of Africa. But a new DNA study has just revealed a history that is far more connected and surprising than we ever knew. In 2 different 7th century cemeteries in southern England, one in Kent and one in Dorset, scientists found the graves of 2 young people with an incredible secret. When they tested the DNA from an 11-year-old girl in Kent and a young man in Dorset, they found that about a quarter of their ancestry came from West Africa. The science is so precise it can tell us that each of them had one grandparent who was 100% West African. These were not outsiders. They were buried with care as full members of their communities. The girl was buried with her aunts and a great-uncle. The young man was buried in a double grave with another local man. This discovery proves that people, not just objects, were moving across vast distances. It shows that even in the early Middle Ages, England was connected to the wider world in ways we are only now beginning to understand. Well, which story was your favorite? Was there an important detail that I missed? Let me know in the comments below. Oh, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next adventure. If you turn on notifications, you'll be the first to know when we dig into more of the past's greatest secrets. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, and I hope to see you next time.